Hey everyone, so today we're watching one of the more popular videos of transfer training for caregivers on YouTube, and we'll see how it goes. I haven't seen this video before, and it'd be interesting to see what's good, see what could improve. All right, here we go.
Moving or repositioning someone who has problems with mobility can be very challenging, but with the right techniques and approach, it can be done. All you need is a little education and using gravity and leverage to your advantage. Here are some basic but very important rules. First, never lift anything or anyone that you cannot comfortably handle. Prepare to lift with your feet a shoulder width apart, back straight, and one foot slightly in front of the other. We'll call that the proper stance.
I don't really know
let the legs do the work,
rationale
not
for
your
that.
back. Rule number 2, plot out your move and be sure of what you can and cannot do. If your loved one can help
a really good
with
one.
the move, let him or her do so. Also, make sure that your loved one's socks or footwear do not have slippery soles. Rule number 3, make sure you don't have to move someone too far from where you're starting. Bring a chair or wheelchair close to the bed, for example, lock the brakes, and keep foot and arm rests out of the way. Always let your loved one know what it is you're planning to do. Be gentle but direct. Before you lift, get as close as you can to your loved one and avoid having his or her arms around your neck.
I like the pat he
You
gives
could
her
both
on the back.
fall that way. Remember to keep the proper stance, back straight, knees slightly bent, and weight balanced evenly. Now pivot and don't twist your body towards your destination. As you
All right, we're going to pause here. If you look at her her positioning, she is really far away from him as she lowers him into the chair. Like she doesn't want to step into the space of the chair. Maybe it's because of the footrests, but to be honest, if you're doing a transfer from bed to chair, you'd probably be wise following their own rule and thinking ahead, taking off the footrests if they're removable, or at least swinging them out of the way so that you and the person you're transferring can get as close as they can to it without tripping. You're not actually going to use the footrests before the person is fully seated in the chair. The other thing too is that you could see how she was almost like shuffling with him after she stood him up. She was walking forwards, he was walking backwards. If you're really setting up the environment well ahead of time, you'd have the wheelchair a little bit closer to where he started off sitting so that he really doesn't have to take steps unless that's really the goal. It's just for most people, if you're going to assist them with this amount of assistance, they're probably at significant fall risk. And in that case, for safety and practicality, you'd probably have things a lot closer when you do the transfer.
pivot, relax the shoulders, and begin to lower.
We're going to stop again. As she helped him into the chair to slowly lower him down, she's still standing too far, which means that she's reaching too far. The farther you reach, the more strain that's on your back, the less control you have over that person, meaning if they lose their balance or something happens, you're going to be caught off balance much more easily, and or they will too.
If you need more help with this sort of maneuver, you can use a gait belt or a transfer belt like this one. This is a cotton belt with a metal buckle which is placed around a person's waist. A good rule when fastening this belt is the 2-finger rule. As you tighten, make a space so 2 fingers can fit inside. This makes the belt tight enough not to slip.
So watching that last transfer, pulling him up from the chair using the gait belt, gait belts are for gait. That's why they're called gait belts. They're strong, right? They're really tough material. But the way she's got the belt around his chest doesn't give you a lot of leverage to actually pull them up, because it's on their upper trunk. If you want to move somebody, you should be close to their center of gravity, which is actually down by their belly button, which is why traditionally most people apply a gait belt around the waist, just above the pelvis, around the belly button area. But even still, the gait belt is not really the device of choice or the technique to use when giving assistance and transfers from sit to stand, where someone needs, more than like 35 pounds of assistance. If it's very light assistance, just for like steadying somebody or maybe a couple pounds of pressure or pulling force, I can see that as being okay. But the way this person had the belt around him wasn't really going to help her move him. If anything, it's going to just pull him in his upper trunk down or forward. The other thing too is that because it's a belt, it's like, you could see it in the video here, it's like really loose when she pulls it because there's some slack in it. Obviously, the solution is not really to tighten that thing way down so that he can't breathe. It's just, it's not going to help you mechanically in lifting someone, and it's not going to make you any safer with using a gait belt like this in this method. The other thing too is that he had his hands around the back of her neck. Now, when you have somebody's hands on you, you can't really control what they're going to do. And if anything, he's going to be pulling because you're telling him to get up from the chair. He's going to use whatever he has available to try and push or pull to bring his body up. And for most people, if they've got their hands up on something, whether it's a walker or you as the caregiver, they're going to yank on that. And having someone's hands on the back of your neck pulling is not really a healthy or safe thing to do for yourself.
And you can firmly hold it to help with lifting or lowering. These same transferring skills can be used to support your loved one in and out of a car or on and off the toilet. At the toilet, have your loved one hold on to a grab bar while you help with clothing. Notice the elevated toilet seat here. It's a big help if your loved one has knee problems or trouble with walking because it reduces the distance needed to lift or lower. It simply rests or bolts onto the regular seat. If no grab bar is available, pull the chair up diagonally to the toilet, move away the arm and footrests, and help your loved one swing over to the toilet seat and then back when the toileting task is complete.
So looking at this picture here, this might have been situational, but I don't see why exactly it had to be this way. They've got a grab bar. That's not going to really give this person very much leverage or stability going down into the chair. Ideally, he would just have two hands on the back of the armrest behind him on the commode. Those handles are for sure not going anywhere because they're pushing down into the floor. Grab bars that are suction cup like that can also come off the wall very easily depending on how they were applied, how long they've been stuck there. If they're just a little misaligned where, say, that suction cup overlaps the grout line a little bit because that wall is uneven, that'll cause the bar to slip, which will probably result in somebody falling or at least being unpleasantly surprised. And you too. If this person were to fall, you could see how the caregiver's body is off to the side. That's probably, I'm guessing, because there was a camera on a tripod in the shower looking out and she didn't want to block the view. But at the same time, because the goal of this video is to show people how to do it, I think they should have just moved the camera to a different spot so they can really actually show a safer way for the person to transfer this gentleman into a toilet or commode.
If you're moving your loved one into a car, roll the wheelchair up close to the passenger seat, lock the chair's wheels, move the footrests, and lift him or her up. When you are both standing, pivot toward the car seat and lower him or her into the car, making sure the head doesn't bump into the frame.
Okay, so you can see how she was assisting him hand in hand, which is okay if someone has really good balance, but based on the earlier clips where this person was being like lifted in and out of like a toilet or commode, in and out of his wheelchair to get in and out of bed. He probably doesn't have the strength or the balance to really be safe if you're holding his hands. What can happen is if you're having somebody walk themselves off a curb to sit down into a car or pivot and turn, and you're holding their hands, if they lose their balance, there's no way to control their fall or regain their balance if you're pulling on their arms. The reason why, again, is because the person's hands are very far away from their center of mass. You can imagine trying to stop maybe a glass full of water from tipping over, and you have a string tied around it, and you're trying to pull the string in different directions to keep the thing from tipping over. It's not going to happen. So what you should be doing is putting your hands on somebody's waist, or again, this would be a perfect situation for having a gait belt. You wouldn't be using it to lift them, but you could certainly use it to steady them as you're doing this kind of transfer.
Then, with your hands under your loved one's knees, lift his or her legs into the car.
As she was lifting his legs into the car, I probably would have recommended that she be standing in a stable position off the curb, or 1 foot on the curb, 1 foot off the curb, so that she's not actually stepping while holding his legs up in the air. It's just not really stable for you, nor is it going to help your back. You can kind of see how she doesn't really have great back posture right now. And so if you do that enough times, maybe you might be at risk for some sort of injury in your back from doing that.
If you're putting your loved one to bed, first sit him or her on the bed's edge and as far back as possible.
You know, it looks like he was almost pushing on something to sit back, and he also looks like he has pretty good arm strength for pushing. He looks like he was pushing on the mattress to bring his bottom back, which is great. Saves you a lot of work if someone can do that. But at the same time, you could see how she's got her hands under his armpits to try and like lift him up and push him back. You're not going to have great leverage there. If you've ever tried to like pick up a bowling ball or get 2 jugs of milk and hold it in front of you, you're not going to have great leverage or strength out that distance, and it's quite a strain. So not only are you not helping the person very much, but you're probably going to hurt yourself if you use this kind of method. Plus, putting your hands in someone's armpits is not really a comfortable place to grab and push and lift. Maybe if you're dealing with like a 10-pound infant or something like that, or someone small. Generally for adults, again, you should have your hands closer to their pelvis or center of gravity.
Then gently lift and swing the legs onto the bed.
So she did a pretty good job. That's the right technique, is to swivel someone's trunk down and head down as you suspend their legs up, because then you're kind of using the weight from their upper trunk and pulling their legs into bed, so you don't have to do 2 stages. You can do it in 2 stages if you need. My main criticism of her technique here is that you could see how she's standing really close to the bed, which is great, but her legs are straight. Her knees are locked. She's bending over at the waist and reaching forward over the bed. That's going to put, again, a lot of strain on your low back.
This will help his or her upper body to roll into place. Once your loved one is lying flat, place a small pillow under his or her head to allow for the spine's natural curvature.
So she just basically grabbed him and tried to yank him up towards the head of the bed. Not only is that super hard, but it's not really safe for you. You're going to get all the friction of the clothes of the person on the sheets or the blankets. It's going to make it a lot harder. That guy probably weighs at least 100 pounds, 120 pounds. You're not going to be able to exert, 100 pounds of pulling force to get him up to the head of the bed in an effective way. And you're certainly going to, strain yourself, your low back, your arms, your neck, whatever, trying to get that person up that way. What I typically recommend is once they're in bed, if they're too far down, you can help them to scoot up by bending their knees so their knees are up, and then have them lift their buttocks. If they've got pretty good strength, they might be able to kind of shimmy left and right with their upper trunk so that you can kind of like scoot upwards that way, basically inches at a time. If they don't have that kind of strength, you're probably going to need like a slide sheet or something like that to help them up. Maybe they would have a grab bar, or they can maybe, if they've got good arm strength, they can hold the head of the bed and help to pull themselves up that way. Basically, the more work that you have them do as they're capable of doing it, the less you have to do as a caregiver, the safer it is for you, and the better it is for them, really.
To move your family member further up on the bed, get him or her to help by bending the knees and, if possible, pushing up against the mattress. To help your loved one sit up on the edge of the bed, put one arm under the shoulder blades and the other arm under the knees. Get in the proper lifting stance and tell your loved one exactly when you're going to move. Gently bring the legs over the edge of the bed as you lift his or her body into a sitting position.
That, again, bringing him from supine, which is laying down on your back, to sitting at the side of the bed, that's the generally recommended method to use, is to bring, again, trunk up and feet off the bed at the same time. What I would recommend usually to reduce the amount of lifting that you do, much less than what she demonstrated, is that you have them on their side facing you towards the edge of the bed. To do that, they might have to start off more towards the center of the bed. So sometimes that's an issue where they can't scoot or you can't bring them there. That's okay. But it does help if they're on their side, because if they're on their side first, you can bring their legs off, their feet off the bed first. And then while supporting underneath their legs with your, say, right hand in this situation, and your left arm would be up over their shoulder onto their back, you would help to tip them up, basically sitting up on the side of the bed. I'm going to pause because there is a big Harley here starting outside my house. Hang on a sec.
What we've been showing you here is how to move or position your family member safely, but accidents do happen, and despite all our good intentions and efforts, your loved one may fall. If it's a slow slide to the floor while you're moving your loved one, let him or her down gently to the floor. If you try too hard to hold him or her up, both of you may risk injury.
The way she was helping him down was pretty haphazard, to say the least. She was like standing to his side and basically like hugging him, and kind of pivoted and turned him like a dip, like you're dancing or something like that. But the problem was that you're going to lose control of someone's weight that way. As soon as all their weight dips down away from you, because he's pivoting away from her, she's going to basically fall on top of him if this was a real fall. He's obviously not really falling. He's strong enough to kind of slowly descend himself down to the floor. But you can see how she tips and loses her balance as she almost kind of falls on top of him. Her elbow lands on the ground, and then she lets go of him after that when she's here. If someone's falling, the better place to be would be behind them with your one leg between their leg. And so as they fall backwards, if you can tip them backwards, if they're losing their balance that way, their weight will land, their butt would land maybe on your thigh or your pelvis, and then you can slowly just kind of slide them down your body to the floor, basically butt down on the floor. And then if you needed to, you can assist them slowly to lay down so they don't bang their head on the back on the ground.
On the other hand, if the fall is hard, call 911 and get professional help for your loved one as soon as possible. So, how do you get your loved one up off the floor once he or she has fallen? If your loved one doesn't use a wheelchair, help him or her get on hands and knees and then bring the strongest foot forward while half kneeling on the other leg. Now, with a chair or other sturdy object in front, help your loved one pull up with his or her arms and push off on the stronger foot to a standing position with both feet together.
So they were talking about using like a chair or a piece of furniture that's really sturdy so that they can push off of it to rise. That's a good suggestion. This fella obviously has really, really good upper body strength and core strength as well. He was able to basically push himself from being on his stomach up to hands and knees, or elbows and knees, which is a hard move to do for most seniors, especially if they've fallen. Usually they're dazed, or they're a little sore, or maybe they've hurt something. Definitely if that's the case and they have pain while they're on the floor, that's a call to 911, and just rely on the firefighters to bring them up safely, or the paramedics. Don't try to pull them up yourself. What's probably going to happen is you're going to drop them, or you're going to hurt yourself in the process. Try to make them as comfortable as possible. Try to make the area safe so that there's no like sharp objects. Maybe they dropped a glass or something. Clear that away so that you and your person you're caring for are safe.
There are a number of devices you can use to lift, transfer, or help your loved one, but the ones we've covered in this video are for the home caregiver who may not have access to these. Talk to your doctor, physical therapist, or occupational therapist for advice on those which are right for your situation. And finally, a reminder. If you're helping to move a loved one with ambulation challenges, you as the caregiver need to focus on your own health and well-being. In order to be the best caregiver you can be, you need to take care of you.
The Family Caregiver Alliance provides a lot of free information for caregivers everywhere. I'd encourage you to check them out at their website. The link is down below. I had fun reviewing this video. If you have any other suggestions, let me know in the comment section below. Otherwise, I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.